Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Byword Show. So glad y'all are here today. Today is the day, you guys. We are rolling in this series, and we have got Joey Odom from RO here with us today. And we're going to be covering how to talk to your kids about phones, screen times, social media. And this is such a hot topic that y'all have been wanting to talk about. And whenever I got connected with Joey and RO, I was like, literally, this is the perfect person to speak to these topics. So, Joey, thank you so much. I'm so excited that you're here.
Hannah Hughes, it's great to see you. As we were saying off camera, you have the best, most alliterative name, Hannah Hughes. It just rolls. It's hard to say Hannah without the Hannah Hughes there. You know, it's just such a great one. You should be
Yeah.
proud of that name you got.
Thank you. I am. Yeah, y'all, we're going to have fun today. I'm so excited to dive into this topic, Joey, but I would love to know as we're getting started, could you just share a little bit about your own story and what originally
Sure.
got you passionate about helping families just get more intentional about their screen time?
Yeah, I'll take you back a few years. I'll take you back 11 years to be exact, when my son Harrison, who is now 16 years old, when Harrison was 5 years old, he was playing his very first soccer season. And if anybody is out there who's listening who has kids in youth sports or knows somebody who has kids in youth sports, when it comes to soccer, maybe specifically, this is my experience, that the kids who really excel in soccer are the kids who appear to have just gotten out of like a work release program, or like our parolees. Like, these are very aggressive children who are thriving in
Yeah.
soccer. So Harrison was not one of those. Harrison is and was the sweetest kid in the world. And so wasn't necessarily successful on the soccer field this season. But, like we did every week, my wife and I, we lugged out the lawn chairs and went up on the Saturday sidelines to watch another game. And in this year, everybody on the team had scored a goal so far at this point in the season, except for Harrison. So here we are. And it was what we expected to be a pretty kind of normal day, but it was pretty extraordinary what happened and unfolded that day. So it happened about midway through the game. And Hannah, I think on this moment, almost like it was a movie, kind of like slow motion, cue the dramatic James Horner music, the instrumental music, as Harrison rears back his leg. He kicks the soccer ball and it glides. And again, it's almost like slow motion, glides. It maybe was slow motion, maybe it was that slow, but it glides over the grass into the back of the net for Harrison's very first soccer goal. And when I tell you the crowd went wild, it was so sweet because all the parents knew that Harrison had not scored a goal yet this season, and this was his goal. So he scores the goal. The crowd goes wild. His coach runs out. He picks him up, lifts him up. But there's this little moment, almost this indecipherable moment in between the ball hitting the back of the net and his coach lifting him up, when Harrison did something that 5-year-old boys do, is he turned to the sidelines to lock eyes with me, to share this moment with dad, right? To see the pride and the smile on my face. And Hannah, it was truly magical, except for the fact that I missed every single moment of it. That when Harrison turned to the sidelines, all he saw was the top of my head because I was looking down at my phone. And he swears he doesn't remember that moment, but I do. And it is imprinted on me. And I just had this realization that moment that something was wrong. That this is, I mean, you think about what we go through in life. Think about, like, we think about who our spouse will be someday, right? Like from when we're very, very young, and then we get married, and then we imagine what our kids will be like. And a lot of us go through some, very tough times of trying to get pregnant. And then we have this child. And then I found myself, it's almost like this all kind of came swirling at once. And I realized, what am I doing? I had prayed and wished for my wife all my life. I prayed and wished for a child, and then I have a child. And here I am at a moment where he just wants to see my smile when I'm looking down at my phone. And the real realization, to put a bow on that, is I realized that this relationship that I had with my phone, this little rectangle in my pocket, was getting in the way of all the most important relationships in my life. And I thought, something has to change. This is not sustainable.
That is huge. And I relate. Like, I feel like, especially in this world where social media and our phones are such a huge part of our day-to-day
Yeah.
life. I mean, we're communicating with people on it. We're also working from it. So many of us now have work that involves social media. We're getting pinged with notifications all day long.
Mm.
And that's not even including if you have a smartwatch or any other devices
Right.
that are alerting you of what else is going on in the internet world.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all know like there's pros and cons to this amazing gift of technology that we now have in our world today.
Yeah.
But how did you start to change your relationship with
Hmm.
technology so that you could reclaim those moments that you realized you were missing?
Well, I want to touch real quick on what you said, and maybe this is a good frame for this conversation because it's very easy at this point. We're a few minutes into the conversation for somebody to shut down and be like, "Oh, great, someone's going to preach to me about my phone again." I want to be real careful because that's not what this is. This is like douse yourself in grace when it comes to this because I
Mm.
thought that that story of missing Harrison soccer goal, I thought that was a unique story. It's not a unique story. We all have experienced something like that, and
Right.
the question is the question is not, do I fully embrace all of my current phone habits because I can't do anything about it? It's not that. Or at the other side of the spectrum saying, okay, I'm going to go throw out my phone. I don't want you to throw out your phone. I have a smartphone, an iPhone. I'm not getting rid of it. So I think it's just really important to embrace kind of the nuance here in this discussion for people listening, is that absolutely we need our phones for a lot of stuff. Absolutely, we should not get rid of our phones. I'm even saying should. I mean, if you're one of those people who think you should, go ahead. But I think generally we don't need to, we don't have to, because we're 17 years into the iPhone experiment here, right? And so we've swung the pendulum pretty far one way. And so now we're kind of finding our footing, and culture is kind of collectively taking a breath and saying, okay, I like some things about this. I don't like some things about this. How can I
Mm.
integrate this into my life in a manageable way? And so the framework that we come from as we talk about this is through a relationship. And I want to keep going back to that word. And so for people who are listening, I just want you to be cognizant of how this is impacting the real relationships in your life and how you can edit that relationship with your device. So that's maybe a long precursor, but I think it's worth saying is just receive this with grace, receive this with ease, let it seep into your subconscious. And you're not going to have to make some vast, drastic change at the end of this episode, I promise. There are some subtle, very subtle tips that we can give you that will make a big difference. But really just start to let this kind of seep into your consciousness and don't block it out. Is that a helpful precursor, do you think?
Oh, absolutely.
So if I can, I'm not gonna try to be too elongated in answering this, but I'd like to, if we can, before I talk about how I began to kind of edit this relationship, I think it's worth exploring this fact that we do have a relationship with our phones. Because as
Yeah.
I said, relationship with our phones, you didn't wince. I bet you nobody out there winced when I said have a relationship with your phones. But we need to pause for just a second and say, it's freaking weird we have a relationship with a device. Let's just acknowledge, like, we have
Right.
relationship as adults, we have relationships with people and animals. We don't have relationships with objects for the most part, right? It's not like, I see my lawnmower about once a week, about 9 months out of the year, right? But I don't have a relationship with my lawnmower. This is a tool that does things for me. It's not as if when a conversation gets boring, I don't go sneak in a quick mow, right? It's not like that's not something we do with our lawnmowers. Maybe we do with our cars, but really not even that. So we've thought about this relationship with the device and how it's so unique, but it's not unique to kids. Kids have relationships with objects, and they are called things like binkies and teddy bears and blankies. So kids have relationship with those, and those objects are actually a very helpful piece of a child's development. There's a term for them. It's called transitional objects or comfort objects. And the purpose those serve is for kids is a very important transition into independence. So what they do when their parents leave, in the absence of their parents, they will cling to these things. They'll cling to a blankie or a
Mm.
teddy bear to give them a feeling of security. So it's giving them a feeling of security. And before long, they realize, okay, mom and dad are gone. I don't have to hold on to my teddy bear. I can do this on my own. So it's super, super helpful. So think about that when it comes to phones. We are clinging to these things, with a child and a comfort object, they're clinging to them in the absence of relationships. We're clinging to them in the presence of relationships. We're doing this
Mm.
at the dinner table with our spouses. We're doing this on date night with our spouses. We're doing it with our kids when they're trying to go to bed. And it's in a way we have to take a step back and realize this is a weird thing. And instead of kind of progressing us towards relationship and independence, this is kind of reverting us back to childhood, this relationship we have with our phones. So I think it's an important place to start there, to acknowledge it's weird that we have a relationship with a device and that we can transition this back into being a tool in our lives versus a relationship with our phones. So that's a long precursor to say I didn't all of a sudden get great at my phone when I had that experience after Harrison's missed soccer goal. It was something I continued to struggle with. And one day I got a text from Heath Wilson, who was a friend of mine from church. He and I knew each other fairly well, but it was kind of an out of the blue text. And he said, "Hey, I got something I want to talk to you about." So we sat at lunch and he described his own struggles with his device and his
Mm.
relationship with the device and the way it was impacting his relationship with his family. And he said, "Hey, what if we did something about this for our own families?" He said, "And I bet you if we did something about it for our own families, I bet you we could do something for a lot of families." And that's when the journey of RO started. RO is a tool, and there are many tools out there. RO is a tool specifically for families. It is for screen time for families. And so for me, what Heath and I recognized was the the hallmark characteristic of our relationships with our devices lies in the fact that they are with us all the time. If there's
Mm.
one thing when it comes to our phones, is that our phones are with us all the time. And the statistics prove this out. We know this for ourselves, but the statistics prove it out as well. 91% of us have our phones with us 24 hours a day. We don't have to move our feet to reach our phones 24 hours a day. And we formed a
Right.
relationship with our phones in the same way that we form relationships with humans. And it begins with proximity all the time. We call this the PID loop, PID. The PID loop is that our phones are with us 24 hours a day. There's the proximity. And as our phones are with us, then we interact with them more. By
Mm.
the mere fact that they're with us, we interact with them more. Again, just like when you see somebody in a carpool line, you start talking to them, right? And you start to get to know them more. And if your kids are friends, and you spend more time around them. And then what happens is all of a sudden, as you interact with somebody more, you begin to become dependent on it. And I'm not saying dependence in a bad way. And let's think about it in human relationships. I'm thinking of dependence in, oh, I'm going to be late for soccer practice. Could you take my son home? Or hey, something happens and they're for you in a pinch. Or if you're having a bad day, you can give them a call. You grow this good kind of dependence. In a similar way with our phones, we're with them all the time, so we interact with them more, and so then we become more dependent on our phones. And that's not always bad. They do great things for us, but what happens is we begin to segue into this kind of state of false dependence, or the belief system of false dependence. So when I say false dependence, I mean, maybe the best example I can think of would be, we all know that we shouldn't sleep with our phones next to us. We all know that the blue light right before you go to bed is bad for us. We know the deluge of information right at the first thing in the morning, that's not good for us. Some of us check them in the middle of the night. We all know this is bad for us. But if you ask somebody, why do you sleep with your phone next to you? The answer is, it's my alarm clock. Okay.
Mm.
So let's break that argument down for a second. Is this a real dependence or a false dependence? I would argue that it's a false dependence, because you can clearly go get an alarm clock on your own. So, but if that's the thing holding us there, and so as we're more dependent on this phone, then we're around it more, and that PID loop begins again. We're proximate to it again. So I want to isolate real quick when I go to the interaction piece. Our phones being with us leads to us interacting it more. And it's almost like when we think about our phones, we think, oh, it's all those inbound notifications that are getting us. It's the dings. And that is true to some degree, but statistics tell us, this is from Dr. Maxi Heitmeyer at the London School of Economics, he tells us that 89% of our smartphone usage is self-initiated. It's
Mm.
not inbound notifications. It's us.
Wow.
It's me sitting in a moment of boredom thinking, hey, what time does the U.S. men's basketball team play today in the Olympics? And then when I find that out, I go watch some highlights of track and field yesterday, and then I go check out what time the Atlanta Braves are playing today, because I'm a Braves fan. And then I think, well, what's the weather going to be next week? Hey, what's the weather like in Los Angeles right now? Or one of that's like, oh, if it's there, it's 92 degrees there. I wonder what the temperature is in Maine right now. And then we go down these wormholes, right? Of
Yeah.
And it all begins with us. So we began this with the idea that, what if we solved the proximity piece of our phone? What if we could get people to get away from the 91% club of being with their phones all the time into the 9% club, to spending a little bit of time physically distant from your phone, apart from your phone? And so that's the journey we've been on. And there's something amazing that happens is that when you spend a little bit of time away from your phone, it begins to build very quickly because you forget about it very, very quickly. And what happens then also is you're able to give your full attention to whatever that moment is. I heard a stat, this is from Dr. Gloria Mark at UC Irvine. She had a study that came out and she said that it takes 23 minutes and 15 seconds to refocus after you've been distracted. I said
Wow.
to my wife when I read that statistic, I said, other than sleeping, I've not done anything in the last decade for 23 minutes and 15 seconds undistracted. And it's all because of my phone. So this was 4 years ago. I am very happy to report that every day, this is waking hours, I spend about 4 hours physically distant from my phone. I know that because those statistics in RO. So this goes from somebody. So if somebody's struggling with this, you're talking to somebody who 4 years ago had not done anything undistracted for 23 minutes in a decade. And now I spend about 4 hours physically distant from my phone because we've grown that muscle. That was a heck of an answer for a simple question, Hannah. Goodness.
No, it's great. And I think that really does lay the foundation for this conversation because the thing is, this is a struggle that's just a normal thing now. Like it's
Yes.
normal. It's something that a lot of us don't even realize is
Mm,
such a huge distraction. I mean, I remember at the beginning of last year, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this challenge going into the new year. And I did this like social media fast or whatever. And then
yeah.
just being really intentional about replacing my screen time with other
Mm,
stuff. And then it was the first time I really started looking at my screen time and
yeah.
I was shocked. I was like, I spend a lot of time on my phone listening to audiobooks or
Hmm.
podcasts, whatever. I spend time on the Bible app. It's
Yeah.
good stuff. It's responding to emails, doing whatever. But there were some weeks, y'all, I'm embarrassed to say it. I
Mm.
my screen time would be like 40 hours. I'm like, that's a full-time job. That is that's insane, right? But it's like
Yeah.
it's so normal, especially because so much of our
Mm,
time now is like working from our phone,
yeah.
connecting with people, even doing stuff that's good and productive, right?
Yes.
But what I've thought about more and more lately now that I have kids who are getting older, well, I have a son who's going to be 5 this year. And it's crazy to me
Mm,
that I have caught myself saying to him, "Can you hold on a minute? I just need to finish filming this reel."
yeah.
Or I just need to finish like responding or doing this post or responding to this email. And it's so crazy to me thinking that number one, my relationship with my phone has become so normal to where like I don't know if I've spent 23 minutes
Mm,
undistracted, but also now we have these kids who are growing up
yeah.
watching their parents spend that
Mm,
much time on their phone. Because for me, like my parents were never on their phone. My parents didn't have social media until like they had grandkids.
yeah.
And so, what do you think parents need to know about how our relationship with our phone is actually affecting our kids who are watching and observing this
Mm.
take place?
Hannah, the number one predictor for how a child will use a phone someday is how their parents use a phone today. I'll
Wow.
say it again, and I think it's super important for everybody to hear this. The number one predictor for how a child will someday use their phone is how their parents use their phone today. Our kids are our kids just by virtue of being kids, their brains are forming. Their beautiful little neuroplastic brains are forming, and so all they're doing is learning and adapting, learning and adapting, learning and adapting. They're taking in pieces of information, and their minds are adapting. And what are they? They're adapting to what is normal. This is what a
Mm.
normal world looks like, and if any of us have ever heard this line, and now that happens over time. So if any of us have ever heard this line, I don't know if you have. I know I did a bunch. I heard this line, "Daddy, put down your phone. Daddy, no phone. Daddy, watch me." Is that a common? Have you heard that before when it comes to
Oh
your
yeah.
phone? I'm not
Oh
asking you to
yeah.
out yourself here, but we hear that, and it kind of makes us. It does one of two things. One of us we get defensive, or two, we kind of feel like crap, and it may be both. Like we feel really guilty. Oh crap, I did it again. I messed up again. If you've ever heard that line and you've ever felt crappy about it, I want to give you some encouragement. I actually want you to celebrate that. I want you to celebrate the fact that your child said that to you because it means two things. The first thing it means is that your child likes you. It means your
Mm.
child wants you to look at them. And that's a great thing. And let's not take that for granted. Our kids like to be around us. And so if they're saying to you, "Mommy, watch me," that means a good thing that they like mommy's approval. So that's a really good thing. So celebrate that your child still likes that. And then the second one I think is even more powerful is, and I want to think exactly how to say this right, is that your child believes they're valuable enough to be looked at. That's really good. Like, we really want that for our kids. That is an internal sense of value that says, yeah, I'm 3 years old, I'm 2 years old, I'm 5 years old, I'm 7 years old, whatever it is. And by the way, my daughter's 14. My daughter still has these daddy watch me moments, but she doesn't say it quite as overtly. But they always have that. They want us to look at them. And that's because they believe they have value. They believe that they should
Mm,
be looked at. And where we need to really get concerned, where we need to really watch ourselves, is when our kids stop saying that, is when we phone snub our kids in the middle of a conversation and they don't even say anything about it. Because what does that mean? That means that we have beaten them down so much emotionally to believe that our phones actually are more important than they are. And that
mm,
sucks. And we don't want that. So
right.
if you're hearing that line, mommy watch me, daddy watch me, mommy put down your phone, please celebrate it and please internalize it. And then at that moment, there's only one response: put down your phone. That's it. That's it. Now, I know things are more important. That's a little bit overly simplistic. An okay answer there in a super important moment is, honey, I can't wait to see this. I have to finish this for work. But you have to be kind of constantly mentally thinking, is this more important than this moment? Is my child's development in this moment what's more important? And the answer very well could be, it's okay to say to them, because you don't want to create a monster either who always gets what they want. It's okay to say, mommy's working right now. I can't wait to see that. Let me finish this. Then I'm going to put my phone down and look at you. Those are a couple things that I think people need to recognize, is that, and there's another thing you said early on. The question was, it was basically the fact that we don't want to look at this is that when you really start to analyze it, and the reason we don't want to look at it, I think, is because we have a kind of a deeply held belief that we can't do anything about it. And I think that's why this problem
Mm,
continues to persist, is that people think that it's hopeless, is that this is just the world we live in. And in fact, I think a lot of people, when they talk about their phones, they say, I'm addicted to my phone. And that's an interesting one, because people, and when they say it, this is kind of funny. I don't know if you'll agree or not, but when people say I'm addicted to my phone, it often comes with a laugh. They'll say, "Oh, I'm so addicted to my phone." Right? And we say it almost like giving ourselves an excuse, in saying
yeah.
like, oh, it's okay, and maybe in like their parenthetical, if it were written like, oh, I'm so addicted to my phone and I can't do anything about it. So what if, as we talk about this, what if we stopped using that language? What if we stopped saying I'm so addicted to my phone? What if we began to look at this as a habit? And by the way, science backs this up, that these the characteristics of our relationship with our phone, and I'm not necessarily talking about some things on our phone, because some things do have addictive characteristics. I'm talking about the relationship itself. It actually
Mm.
shares kind of patterns of compulsion more than addiction. These are a bunch of smart people who have said this, and I'm just repeating them. But what if we looked at it, instead of addiction, we looked at it as a habit? Because I can do something about a habit, right? Because with addiction, the first thing you do in a 12-step program is you say, I'm powerless over this thing. So when saying you have an addiction, you're also saying I'm totally powerless. And then you have to get rid of the thing and never use it again, right? Alcoholics don't drink once a week, they drink never. So with the
Mm,
habit, we're not at all suggesting that you're powerless. I'm actually saying with the habit, you have agency. And with the habit, you don't have to get rid of the thing. You just need to learn to manage your habits a little bit better. So just by saying that, in a way, Han, it's like I pull my shoulders back, my chest goes out, because I think, yeah, I can do something about a habit. I do have agency here. And I bet you people listening to the show today are people who are always looking for constant improvement, who like the idea that they have agency in a matter. And so let's start watching the words we use over this, and replace addiction with habit. So just to tie all of that up, tie all of that in, we have to recognize that we do have agency. And then we really have to recognize that the stakes are incredibly high with our kids, because they're soaking in the information and their normal world is being framed up. And instead of them thinking that their phones are more important than they are, they can live a life that says, I am valuable. I have value. I know, because my mommy's eyes are fixed on me when I talk to her.
that's so good. I think that's huge, just changing the language,
Yeah.
because it doesn't have to be something that it's just normal and we accept, like, oh, this is just how it's going to be. Like,
Yeah.
this is our world now, like it is quickly affecting us more than we
Mm.
think. And
Yeah.
I think, especially as a parent, knowing that I've got little kids watching me, it makes me want to be more mindful, like,
Mm.
all the time. It's
Yeah.
just realizing, like, as they get older and have conversations and ask questions, you just realize how much they are soaking up.
Yeah.
So you've got kids that are a little older now. I'm curious what kind of conversations you have with
Mm.
your kids about phones. Do your kids have phones? And if they do, how do you manage it as a family?
Yeah. I had the benefit of getting ahead of this before they had phones. That makes a huge difference. A lot of people will, when it comes to phones, it's easy to point the finger at somebody else and say it's their problem, it's my spouse's fault, my kid's fault. For me, I recognized it was my issue to start with. So our kids, we had RO, we were kind of starting the business 5 years ago. So my kids were 11 and 9, and so they saw 9 and 11 years of bad behavior, but then they saw, okay, we're doing something about it. And there's a component to RO. RO is a platform that helps families with screen time, and an optional piece of that is having an RO box, a box you could put your phone in. And so they could physically see me at that time putting my phone in the RO box.
Mm.
And they knew when that happened that it was dad's going to be fully with them. And so obviously we explained to them why that was. And then we kind of framed it around different types. With this was all about relationship. Again, was, hey, it's dinner time. We're going to spend time looking at each other and talking. Hey, yeah, when you see dad out reading his Bible in the morning, you see I don't have my phone with me because that's time for my devotion. So those were easy ones where at that time it was kind of easier. Like when your kids are young, the stakes are high, but the pain is low of this with technology.
Mm.
As they get older, the stakes remain high, but the pain gets a little bit higher as it goes along. So when they got phones, and I think I would have done this a little bit differently. I probably gave my kids phones a little bit earlier than I would have liked. We didn't have like a rule book necessarily. Maybe I embraced the gray area more than a lot of people would be comfortable, but I did, and I kind of like how it's turned out with them. It's Andy Stanley says that healthy relationships don't require rules, and so we began hopefully with this healthy relationship, and the relationships was that at dinner time we don't have our phones. When we're talking with somebody, you don't have your phone at night. Oh, your phone never goes in your room. And we give some exceptions if they ask here and there, but your phone doesn't go in your room. To this day, you don't have Safari on your phone. So my kids don't have unfettered access to the internet. So,
Mm.
and by the way, we're slowly introducing, as they ask for it, social media. And that's something that's, in select cases, not all of them, but we're doing that as they get older. They're in high school now. And so I want them to understand how that works. So it has been a constant discussion, but it's always begun with relationship. Now we also have conversations about, not sending inappropriate pictures and all that kind of stuff. So it's an ongoing dialogue, ongoing conversation. But the key was, Hannah, it began young, and we see a lot of people who try to correct mistakes that they've made. It's really hard. It's not impossible. It's really hard. But if you're starting these at 15, 16, 17 years old, it's really challenging. And I don't want that to sound hopeless, but I think most of your listeners are going to fall in the category where they're not too late. And I don't think you're ever too late, but it's really early and you can get ahead of it. So that's what we did, is we started really early. And even when I say I wish I would have given my kids phones a little bit later, I say that, but we have not had huge problems with phones. There are corrections every now and then, but it's been so normal for them that human relationships, real relationships, your relationship with yourself comes before your relationship with your phone.
That's so great to hear and very encouraging, because I've talked to other moms who have kids around my kids' age, little and just starting school and just starting to
Mm,
get exposure to, quote, the real world.
yeah.
And as I think later down the line to my kids having phones, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, the things they're going to be exposed
Mm,
to, and the fear that we sometimes feel as parents about that. Do you have any advice for how to approach
yeah.
that season as it comes? Like, okay, my kids, like what if my kids start asking for a phone? What if they start asking about social media? What kinds of things do you think were helpful in your family, conversations to have along the way, getting them ready for that point where you felt like, okay, maybe we can do this phone thing?
Yeah. I'm not going to be evasive with this answer, and I will answer that piece of it, but I'm going to give the most unsatisfying answer that anybody could hear. And it's this, is that you can talk all you want, but it's so much more is caught than taught. It is you. This is, we talk about people start, stop. And this may be the only, if anybody takes one thing away, this may be it. Talk about the start, stop method as a parent, because we all want to know, how do I teach my kids to do it right? And, oh, my kid's doing this, or point the fingers, but it begins, you have to start with yourself. It has to be I'll go back to the number one predictor of how your child will use a phone is how you use your phone. So if it's normal to them, you have it at the dinner table, they're going to have it at the dinner table. table, no matter how many times you tell them not to, that they're going to phone snub you if they're used to being phone snubbed themselves. So you
Mm,
have to start with yourself. And it begins, and here's the good news, don't make it too big of it. Everybody wants to make this so big and so much fear comes in. No, start today with your relationship with your phone. So that's the start, is start with yourself. And the second thing is stop at nothing to get it right. Just
mm,
keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. If you fall down, get back up and do it better tomorrow. You can continue, you can model this well and align with your spouse. It's really hard if spouses aren't aligned, but share this episode with them and have them talk about it. You need to be aligned on that because your child's going to mimic it. When it comes to parenting, we talk about the 3 M's of parenting with smartphones, is that we as parents, first M is we model, and we have historically modeled a bad relationship with our phones. Then we give our kids a phone one day, and what do? They mimic what we have modeled. And then we do something absolutely crazy. We get mad at our kids for mimicking what we've modeled to them.
mm,
So, what if in this opportunity where your kids are the age they are, pre phone, or somebody's listening, and even if your kids within months of getting a phone, or even if you've just given your kids a phone, just begin with the modeling because you can model it well, and then they're more likely to mimic it, and then you can make memories and make magical moments and any other cool M you can think of, right? Like you can change this. It doesn't have to be the way we see it. So that's one, is you're going to have to model this well. When it comes to conversations, I would encourage you to do this. I would encourage you to do this small and often. Don't look to have one conversation. And this is very
mm.
similar to having a sex talk with your kids. We just Megan Michelson runs an organization called Birds and Bees, which everybody should follow because it's terrific. But she talks about having the sex talk, and she talks about it with young kids, starting it young, having it small and very frequently. And it's not oversharing, but just like little bits at a time. So if you can do this, if you have the luxury of time, do it slowly. And when your kids get a phone, if they're right on the precipice there, I've heard someone say this, and I love this. If your kids are asking for a phone, you have to know that that's going to require you to double, triple, quadruple down on keeping an eye on it. You are going to need to read their text messages, and they're going to need to know that. I think
Mm,
you are going to need to keep them, and I would encourage this. Don't let your kids have a phone in their rooms overnight. Just don't cave to that. The number one form of torture after however many years of humanity, the number one form of torture is still sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation
mm,
is going to crush you. It's going to crush your kids emotional as they're trying to form emotion and try and keep up with school. Just don't do it. Don't let it in their rooms. Don't let them sleep overnight. And then it's very seldom Hannah will actually give a prescription, but that's one I'll say is just don't do it. Don't let them do it. I don't care if all their friends are doing it. Another thing that I would encourage, this is apart from having the conversation with your kids, is have conversations with other parents in the same stage
mm.
as you. And the earlier you can do this, the better. We're seeing parents, form these pacts and say like, okay, we're gonna wait until a certain age. Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation, and many of you have probably read that. It's one of the most groundbreaking books of this year, and it's fantastic. A couple of the norms that he gives that we should adopt as a society, and I'm going to cling to this, is that kids shouldn't get phones until high school, and they shouldn't get social media until they're 16. Let's just start there. We've heard
Yeah.
wait until 8th. There's a new movement called Hang 10, which I think is fantastic. And they're saying, let's wait on phones until sophomore year, wait till their 10th grade. And if you can do this with other people, that's collective action. That's what Jonathan Haidt calls it. If you can do this with other people, that's where it really, really becomes powerful, even if it's just a buddy system. But if you can do it in a group, that's amazingly powerful. So I know I covered 3 things because it's a very complex answer. The first one is for you to model it well. This is the cornerstone. This is the cornerstone. And start with yourself and stop at nothing. Take whatever drastic measure you need to get it right for yourself so you model it well to your kids. The other one is have those conversations with your kids early, have them often. There's a great organization that we love called Screen Sanity. Screen Sanity has a lot of tools for how to have these conversations, and they have I believe it's screensanity.org, but it's just Google Screen Sanity. They're fantastic. And then the other one is to do it with other people. Make this a group project. It takes a village to raise a good child. So let's do this together. Let's band together. And I think if you do those 3, it's not going to be perfect, but you're going to be 99% farther along than anybody else. And the very last tip is don't overcomplicate it. Now, that may have sounded like a lot, but you don't have to overcomplicate it. This is something that you can approach today. I'll even give in a few minutes, if you'd like, a few little tips in the home for how to do this. But Just start today. Don't wait on it. Don't wait for a perfect plan. Just begin this today.
That's so good. I love that you mentioned doing it with other people
Yeah.
because I remember when we had our son and I was thinking through, like, as a new parent, you just think through, like, okay, these are all the things that I'm not going to do with my kid, or, like, these are all my expectations. And then you start communicating that to like grandparents and things like that. And I was telling
Mm,
my mom, okay, well, we don't want him to watch a bunch of TV. We want to limit screen time and we're going to do this, this, and this. And she was like, I love that. But just know you're going to be the minority going
yeah.
forward if you're really going to limit like
Mm.
screen time and stuff like that. And I was like, that's a hard truth, but it is true. Like it's going to be hard
It is
when
going
so
to
many
be
other people.
hard, but I will say that it is absolutely, but I believe in you taking that action. What that does is it gives other people confidence to take that action. Because when you feel
Mm,
like the tide's just going this way, then everybody's gonna do it. But you all in a way, Hannah, it's almost like you give somebody else permission to do it. They say like, well, the Hughes do that, we can do that. You know what I mean? Like you can begin to normalize different things. And so I don't. She's 100% right that it may feel a little bit out of the ordinary at first, but other people will begin to see that and have the confidence that they can do it too and have the permission to do it themselves. So something will happen, and don't just feel like you're, just a candle in the wind here. Like it can ignite with other people who join you, but it takes your bold action. It takes your
mm.
alignment as spouses, and it takes you doing something and then giving other people confidence to do it. Then they do it. Then all of a sudden you find all these people who wanted to do it but didn't quite have the confidence to take the step that you did. And then all of a sudden that's when things take off.
I love it. Yeah. So talk to us then about the practical steps that we can
Yeah.
start taking with our spouse, like in marriage and then with kids, and just, starting this ripple effect.
Yeah. Well, just in the home, there are a few things that I would encourage people to begin today. One of them is, and we call these the three S's. So one of them is in your home. I want you to establish these sacred times and sacred times, sacred places where it's just phone free zones, and this goes for everybody, right? This goes for everybody. The easiest one is at the dinner table. Is let's just begin with this at the dinner table and just say this is just phone free right here. And it's like we do demonize screens as a society, but what about like just a family movie without a second screen? What if we began
Right.
there? Is a family movie without a second screen, and so where everybody shares a common experience and one experience together. So that's one, is establish those sacred times and sacred places in your home. The second one, I want people to spend, there's a second S, spend 1 hour physically distant from their phone every day. Now, that may sound like a lot. Again, we said 91% of us don't ever do that. Only 9% do. So if you can't do an hour, do 5 minutes. Start today with 5 minutes of physical distance from your phone. Is create a barrier between you and your phone, and just be physically different from your phone, and think of it as a muscle. You're building up a muscle slowly every day until you get to an hour. And once you hit an hour, keep going. If you already do an hour, you make it an hour and a half, make it 2 hours. So with RO, the average amount of time that someone spends apart from their phone in their waking hours is about an hour and a half every day, which is tremendous. I mean, we've done the math. I can't think of it offhand, but that adds up to like days and weeks, a year of physical distance from your
Wow.
phone, and that's really something to be proud of. And it's not all about just spending time away from your phone. Like that's like what's motivational about that. But what is motivational about that is the life that happens on the other side. Is that when you're
Yes.
having a conversation, that you're fully there and you can laugh and you can have these moments you can't really pre-plan, that just kind of happen organically on their own. We have a friend named Billy Phoenix from Atlanta, and Billy says that quality time only comes from quantity time. So you have to begin to aggregate that time. So again, the first one, establish sacred times and sacred places in your home. Second one is spend an hour away from your phone daily. And the third one I love, it's more kind of the, if that's the science, here's the art, is to search for moments of connection.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is search for these little moments throughout the day. It's almost like these little bids. The Gottman Institute calls them bids. These little bids that our families, our people in a relationship are putting out to us all the time. These little subtle things that are like my daughter saying, "Oh, I really had a hard time at volleyball today." What she wants in that moment is me to pick up on that bid
mm,
and fully focus on her and say, "Hey, Gianna, tell me what happened." And the thing that will kill that moment, the thing that will kill the intimacy of that moment and the intimacy in a relationship, is if she's talking and I take a glance at my phone. that'll kill that moment, because then all of a sudden she
Yep.
feels completely shut down. And she, it doesn't just kill that moment, it kills future moments, because her willingness to open up again is so diminished because she felt that feeling and she doesn't like that. So I think that's crushing our intimacy. But what if instead, when my daughter says, I had a rough time at volleyball today, or my wife says, hey, can I talk to you? Or my son says, Dad, I'm having some friend issues. What if instead we said what I think are the six most powerful words in a relationship in 2024? If we just made the simple comment, we said, let me put down my phone. And then
Mm,
we put down our phones. And when I say put down our phones, I don't mean sitting face up in front of us. I don't mean flipping it away face down in front of us. I mean physically putting it somewhere away from you, and then sitting down and looking that person in the eyes. Because what that says, Hannah, is something very powerful. It says, on my phone, theoretically 8 billion people can reach me, and you are more important than every single one of them.
mm.
So what does that do for a 14-year-old girl who's struggling with friends or volleyball or social or whatever it is? What does that do to her inner sense of value? So the next time that she's confronted with something difficult, she at least has this foundation to stand on that says, my dad loves me. And I know it because I've seen his eyes gaze into my eyes. What does that do for my son, a young man who wants to be a good man? What does that do for the intimacy in my marriage of this simple act of putting down your phone? And this is something, Hannah, this is available to everybody today. Literally everybody. Is this dinner time? Hey, and it's worth saying. I don't want to, don't pat yourself too hard on the back when you do it. I've made that mistake many times. But just saying like, oh, let me put down my phone. And just doing it and then being there, they're going to feel what that means. You don't have to explain to them what you've just done. They're going to see that and they're going to feel your attentiveness, and that will change a relationship. So to bring all of this back together, that's how you change your relationship with your phone. Is you change your proximity to your phone, and then you focus on the human relationship in front of you. And I'll say it one more time. These three things: establish sacred times and sacred places in your home, spend 1 hour physically distant from your phone and search for moments of connection, and then say those six powerful words, let me put down my phone. That will change the relationship that you have with everyone around you. So that's how you do it. Don't make it too hard. It is available for every single person who's listening today.
That's so good. Thank you for sharing that, because I think it can feel overwhelming at times to feel
Yeah.
like, oh, I gotta stop using my phone. I gotta, put it up and do all these like really extreme
Yeah.
changes to feel like we're making an impact or, being intentional.
Mm,
But I love that it is so accessible for all of
yes.
us to be able
Yeah.
to start right now, today. I would love to know though, because, and going back to one of the very first things you said in this conversation is just infusing it with grace.
Mm,
'Cause it's not like we're asking you to put away your phones forever, y'all. Like, we're gonna keep using our phones. So, what would you say to the parent who's listening and maybe just feeling the guilt and shame, like, "Ah, I feel like I messed it up and I keep messing up. I can't get this right. I feel
yeah.
like I just have lost this battle."
I wanted maybe the best comparison I think would be, just think of it like you're building a muscle. If I went and worked out and I was, doing bench press, and I didn't lift one, on the last rep, I didn't get it all the way up, I wouldn't go quit weightlifting. I wouldn't
Mm,
like forever never weightlift again. I would realize I missed one rep and I'm getting stronger, and I'm going to do this workout again tomorrow, or I'm going to go, next week I'm going to do the same workout. We're too hard on ourselves. We're looking at this in too binary of terms. You're building a muscle. I've lived, Harrison's 16 years old. He doesn't even remember me missing a soccer goal. I'm going to mess up again and again and again. Dr. Becky Kennedy from Good Inside, she talks about how one of the most powerful pieces of relationship is repair, and the prerequisite to repair is failure, right? You can't repair something unless you've messed it up already. So you're in good company. You're halfway there if you've messed something up. So let's cut out the shame. For those who are believers who share the same faith as us, there is nothing the enemy would love more than to whisper in your ear is, screwed it up again. You screwed it up again. I'll promise you this: that's not the Holy Spirit. That's not your Heavenly Father telling you that. Heavenly
yeah.
Father is saying, like, you have grace. I'm going to give you a fresh batch of grace tomorrow morning again. And guess what? No matter what you do tomorrow, this gets me a little emotional thinking about it, is I'm going to give you a fresh batch of grace the next day. So don't discount your deservedness of grace when your Heavenly Father is telling you that I'm going to give you grace every single morning, right?
Mm.
And His mercies are new every single morning. So let's get out of that, because that's not going to go anywhere good at all. Bounce back, get up the next day, It's okay. Your kids are very resilient, and you're going to teach them in doing that. And here's a cool thing: you're going to teach them in doing that, as you give yourself grace, that they should be the type of people that give themselves grace as well, that learn from their mistakes, that give themselves grace, who bounce back, and they do it better the next time. So it's going to be easy, and that's going to be the temptation. We love beating ourselves up, and we need to give ourselves permission to receive some grace.
Man, Joey, that's so good. And I just appreciate everything you guys are doing at RO, the way that you've just modeled being in the process with this,
Hmm.
still learning, still growing, and just showing up every day and trying
Yeah.
again, building that muscle. So, will you just tell everybody where they can get connected, where they can
Yeah.
learn more?
Yeah, for sure. I would love, so I have a couple things. One, RO has historically been a membership where you have to buy a box. A box comes along with it. We have just now we are opening up the ability for you to try RO for free. That's a brand new thing. So if you may have heard of it, you can try it today for free. And then you can do it on an app basis. So you don't, it's not this huge investment out of the gate. So you can have the software only that will, I'm telling you, back to the stop at nothing to get it right. Take the step. If this is something you've struggled with, I would encourage you, and this is not, I promise you, it's not a sales pitch for RO. I'm just telling you that from what we've found, this is the most effective thing that will change your relationship with your phone. So go download the app right now. It's totally free to do that. The second thing I'll say is we're in the at the early in 2025, we are launching in conjunction with Think Media, Gabe and Rebecca Lyons, and Dr. Darren Whitehead, who's written a book called The Digital Fast. We are launching a church-wide digital fast at the beginning of 2025. With all the noise in the
Wow.
election in 2024, a church-wide, we think that the church should be leading culture when it comes to technology. And this is an opportunity we have. So if that is interesting to you, I want you to go to digitalfast2025.com, digitalfast2025.com, to learn more. If you are a pastor, you can sign your church up there. If you are someone who's a congregant, please let us know. Just send us an information request from there, and we will reach out to your church and say that you're interested in that. Tell your church about it. So this is something we believe that we will have tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people mobilized around this idea of a digital fast for 28 days to begin 2025. So that's the second one. And then the third one, you can check out our website, goro.app, GOARO.app, goro.app, if you want to learn some more. And again, download the app, go to digitalfast2025.com, and then check out goro.app.
That's so awesome. Y'all know I'll make sure everything is linked for you. There's so much more goodness where this came from. But Joey, again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here and sharing with us today. It has been so, so good.
Thank you, Hannah, so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune into another episode of the Byword Show. I love having you here, and I am truly so thankful for your support. Don't forget to share a screenshot of this episode to let me know you were here, and quick favor, if you enjoyed this episode, would you take a second to leave a review? It really helps our community grow. If you want more, you can shop my books Waking Up and Love Is at thehannahhughes.com or on Amazon, and be sure to join my email list for all the latest news. I can't wait to chat again soon, but in the meantime, be sure to come connect with me on social media, and remember, I'm cheering you on.